All right, good morning, everybody. Good morning. We are so excited that you are here to join us today to celebrate Black History Month here at the White House. We have had a collection of events over the past couple of weeks. I'm a little hoarse and maybe a little tired because my name is Heather Foster, and I direct our African American outreach here at the White House and also coordinate all of our Black History Month events. And so we're so excited to have a packed out room here today for our White House Champions of Change. This is a fantastic program where we're able to highlight local people who are champions in their community. So give them a round of applause this morning. We're excited to have students, educators, teachers, and our members of Congress here. And it is now my pleasure and my honor to introduce Valerie Jarrett.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the White House. We are just delighted to have you here. To Congressman Scott, Congressman Adams, Congressman Clyburn, thank you for your leadership, your support for HBCUs, and for everyone for coming out on this very cold weather. Is there anyone who lives in a city that's this cold? I'm the only one, like, all right. So everybody else is from warmer climates. Well, we appreciate you coming out. The sun is shining, and we are so happy to have you. To the students at HBCUs, to the presidents of the colleges, to the administrators, to the alumni, to everyone here who is supportive of HBCUs. We love Champions of Change. It is one of my favorite events that we do all year because it gives us a chance to highlight ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things in their community. And when you go back home, the fact that the White House recognized your efforts, you'd be amazed, the local press. People just love this back home. And it gives us a chance to highlight what we are really about, because we know that real change doesn't happen in Washington. It happens around our communities all across the country. And you are the best and the brightest and the examples that we want to highlight for what change really looks like. So before I even get started, could the champions please stand up and be recognized? Come on. All the champions. Thank you. Thank you very much. So what I want to do, rather than just give you my prepared remarks, is just tell you a story of why this is so personal for me. Because I would not be standing here in front of you if it were not for HBCUs. Now, I didn't attend an HBCU, but my story begins with my father, who grew up here in Washington and attended Howard University, both undergraduate. Yeah, anybody from Howard in the house? That was pretty easy to get applause. I figured it was safe in this room. He also went to Howard for medical school and worked really hard and enabled him to afford to pay for me to go to college. And so I think about him often and the fact that all of the hard work laid the foundation for my success. And he was a physician, and he practiced, and he gave back to his community, but it was also important to him that he make a path forward for me to be able to stand on his shoulders, and I'm proud to do that. Also very specially, I would like to tell you about my great-grandfather, Robert Robinson Taylor, who was the first African-American to graduate from MIT. He was the son of a slave, grew up in North Carolina, and I think often, and he's on my mind right now because the U.S. Postal Service just dedicated a forever stamp in his name last week, which was pretty special. And I often think about what that journey from North Carolina must have been like for this young man who was, obviously he'd never been on a train before, let alone going up to MIT. And the fact that his father, who was born a slave, was able to instill in him the self-confidence to think that he could go up there and compete with people who had had far more advantages than he ever had. But they did not dedicate the stamp to him because he went to MIT. They dedicated the stamp to him because after he left MIT, Booker T. Washington recruited him to go to Tuskegee, and he designed many of the buildings on Tuskegee's campus and spent his career there. And I often say to young people who complain about their dormitories on college campuses today, they're kind of spoiled, let's face it, younger generation, and I say, well, you don't understand, the students who went to Tuskegee, and it was Tuskegee Institute back then, had to actually manufacture the bricks and then build the dorms. So it's a little easier than it was back then. So I share those two men in both my mother and my father's side of the family to say we all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And HBCUs have been the backbone of the education for so many African Americans across our country, and they are as important now as they have ever been. And what we need to do is to make sure that we are investing in our, not just the HBCU colleges and universities, but the students. Because after all, it's their success that this is all about. Because we are counting on you, and I'm saying this now to the young people. You have a beautiful smile, young lady. To the young people who are here today, that we're just counting on you. It's all about a relay race, and each of us takes that baton just that much further than the person before us. And all of this, I think, is particularly relevant as we are coming up in a couple of weeks on the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act. And I know how hard our leaders in Congress have been fighting for legislation to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. And 50 years is a big part of that arc, and we've made an enormous amount of progress. And I just saw the movie Selma. Has anybody seen Selma? Yeah? Amazing movie. Amazing movie. We showed it here a few weeks ago, and I have also had the chance to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis as he described to me and to the group that was with us what happened that day. And I know how much the President and First Family are looking forward to participating in that ceremony on this 50th anniversary. And I think we just have to, in order to look at the future, we have to be very mindful of our history. And that's another huge advantage to the HBCU education is I don't know a graduate from an HBCU college that has any question about their identity and their history and their purpose in this country. And although we all are Americans, we should be able to celebrate our history, which is a unique history. And that's another enrichment to the experience. So I could go on and on, but you have a big program ahead of you, and you're going to hear an enormous amount about our champions and as well about how we can work together and partner going forward. I make one last pitch for you, and that is we're also coming up on the one-year anniversary of the launch of My Brother's Keeper that the President launched on February 27th last year, and that's our effort, as I hope you all are aware, to work very closely with boys and men of color and make sure that we are giving them all the opportunity to enrich their lives and reach their dreams. And we've made an enormous amount of progress in this last year on that front. And as you think about ways of giving back, I hope you'll think about ways of helping our young people to make sure, our very young people, to make sure that they get that fair chance and great opportunity as well. So thank you again. One more shout out to our champions, please join me. And I'm turning it back over to Heather, who I have to say to you, she's going to really be annoyed at me for this, but exactly. Woo, woo to Heather. Heather does an extraordinary job. She has a lot on her plate. She does it with grace. She does it with decency and competency, and I just love her to death. So welcome back, Heather.
All right. So now you've heard from Valerie Jarrett. So now we are going to continue our program today. We have a lot of different things. We're going to keep this active, interactive. I'm going to ask everyone to use social media. So we do have a great hashtag. It is #HBCUChamps. All right, so every time you've heard a speaker, every time you have a reaction, make sure you use that on your social media. Feel free to check in and say you're at the White House. We're excited about amplifying this today on Twitter, social media, Facebook, everything. So we're going to turn things over now. We have a video from First Lady Obama talking a little bit about Black History Month.
Hello, everyone. As you all know, February is Black History Month, when we pause to honor all those who have come before us, historical giants like Dr. King and Harriet Tubman, cultural heroes like Maya Angelou and Jackie Robinson, and the folks whose names we'll never know, but whose sweat, blood, and unthinkable sacrifices paved the way for us to have the opportunities we have today, opportunities to earn an education, to get a good job, to take charge of our own destinies. But while we've made some real progress, we also know that we are far from that promised land that Dr. King spoke of all those years ago. In recent months, we as a nation have had some painful reminders of that lingering distance between the world as it is and the world as it ought to be. So this month, I hope all of us as Americans will step back and think about how those folks from earlier generations would tackle the issues we're facing today, from education and unemployment to poverty and incarceration. Let's think about the kind of passion and determination they would bring to these struggles. And let's try to infuse our own work with that kind of energy and courage. We don't have to give a soaring sermon or organize thousands of folks at a rally, though we certainly can. But can we mentor a young person? Can we help students at the local high school fill out their college applications? Can we push the leaders in our schools and city halls and in Washington, D.C. to fight just a little harder to ensure that all our children can fulfill their boundless potential, no matter what they look like or where they come from? That is how we honor the struggle of all those giants and all those everyday folks who came before us, by stepping up and making sacrifices of our own and giving our kids and grandkids opportunities we never could have imagined for ourselves. And during this Black History Month, may we all rededicate ourselves to this critically important work. Thank you, and God bless.
All right. Okay. All right, so at this time, we are going to hear from, okay. So there will be multiple members of our staff here today doing several different introductions and moderating the panels. I'm going to turn things over now to my colleague, Jesse Moore from the White House Office of Public Engagement.
Hey, everybody. Nice little peek behind the curtain you got right there. Boil oil machine. It's actually my honor today to introduce your keynote speaker. Again, my name is Jesse Moore. I'm a speechwriter and advisor on outreach here in the Office of Public Engagement. And I get to introduce one of my mentors and our Secretary of Transportation, Anthony Fox. Let's hear it for Anthony Fox. Just warm it up for him. I've known Secretary Fox for several years, and I can tell you he's a call and response type of speaker. So give him love. Yeah, just make this emotional. Yeah, I'll be brief. I will tell you this: he is the 17th Secretary of Transportation this country has had, which means he is responsible for about 55,000 employees, a $70 billion with a B dollar budget. And his primary goal is to ensure that America maintains the safest, most efficient transportation system in the world by land, sea, and air. Sound like a superhero when we list it out like that. I met him in Charlotte, and I can tell you it was before he ran for mayor. It was, I don't know if you got any gray hairs yet. Nothing yet? They coming in? Okay. He's one of those men, you meet him and you immediately know this person is headed somewhere. He is an incredible talent. He is a leader in this administration and this country, and I'm proud to call him my mentor and my friend. Secretary Anthony Fox.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Jesse. What a great young leader we have in Jesse Moore here at the White House, and all the great things you do are attributable to you, and any of the mistakes you make, I'll take the blame for those. Look, I am excited to be here today, and I want to thank and also recognize Valerie Jarrett, who I understand has already addressed you, and has really talked a lot about knowing your history in order to be able to move forward and to be able to do some of the great things that many champions in this room have accomplished. I've read about all of these great champions of change and what they've done to increase access to education and whether it's teaching or mentoring or raising money so families can cover tuition. All of these great leaders are extraordinary and great examples of what it takes to help kids get over the finish line. I want to share with you a story that comes actually from my own family as it relates to this. Jesse talked about the days before I was a mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I remember running my first campaign for mayor of Charlotte, and you know, you go around and you do community events and you're constantly talking to all kinds of people. And one time I was at a community meeting and I ran into someone who said, you know, I've got to tell you a story about your grandfather. Of course, I had grown up in my grandparents' home. My grandfather had been a principal in the segregated school system. And a lot of times people would call him Mr. Fox. So much so that today when people call me Mr. Fox, I wonder who they're talking about. Well, anyway, this gentleman said, you know, your grandfather did something very unique that changed my life. And I said, really, tell me more. And he started to tell me that when he was a high school senior, my grandfather was his principal. And he was the first person in his family who even endeavored to go to college, but he didn't know how to fill out the applications, and my grandfather sat down with him to fill out the applications. And then he said, you know, I was fortunate enough to get in, but I didn't have the money to go. And so then he started to describe how my grandfather helped him fill out his financial aid forms because no one in his family had done that either. And he said, then I got scholarship. But in order to actually get the scholarship, I had to travel 2.5 hours to Raleigh, North Carolina to sign the paperwork, and I didn't have a way to get there. And he said, you know, your grandfather did something that no one else could have done for me. He gave me the keys to his car. And I drove that 2.5 hours. I signed that paperwork. I went to school. I studied as hard as I possibly could. And I'm a surgeon now. And I want to thank your grandfather for that great service. Folks, the reality is that for many kids, they just need an open door. They need a hand. Somebody who cares enough to extend themselves to help them see a future that maybe they don't even see for themselves. And what is so important about recognizing folks who provide that hand is that it holds up examples that all of us can relate to. None of us gets here by ourselves. And frankly, if we don't help someone behind us, we'll end up stuck somewhere in the future. And so it is so vitally important that we do the kind of recognition that we're doing today. If you think about your own life, I'm sure that you can think about people who helped you along the way. And I think at this point, it's February, it's Black History Month, we're in a historic administration. I think the moment that we take to recognize the great folks who have done this in our historically black colleges and universities is an incredibly important point to be making today. So, having said that, HBCU graduates, as you all know, do some remarkable things, and this is why we continue to have programs like those that are sponsored by the Department of Transportation that offer scholarships to HBCU students who are eager to enter into careers in transportation. Just a few days ago, I was in Tallahassee, Florida, and I learned very quickly that my experience at Davidson College was a little different because when they handed me my notes to talk to these great students, and I said, it's great to be here at FAMU. I figured that out quick. You know, I had folks saying, I don't know about that boy. But anyway, The reality is we value diversity. And we also know that men and women attending HBCUs are developing the right skills and work ethic to work in government or within industry. And so while you carry out your missions at HBCUs, in a way you're also helping us carry out our mission. So I want to thank everyone for that. I want to say again how proud I am to be here. And I want to invite all of you to stand up when I call your names and receive some applause. Let's start with Abayoni Ayi. Where are you? Good to see you. Congratulations. From Central State University, Dr. Dolores Alexander from Tuskegee University. Dr. R. Renee Elliott from Oakwood University. Dr. Gregory Goins from North Carolina Agriculture and Technical State University. Heard of that place? Dr. Robert A. Johnson, Jr., PhD, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. Tanya Rush from Morgan State University. Dr. J.K. Haynes from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. Tommy Tonia from Alabama State University. Freddie T. Vaughns from Bowie State University. Dr. Herbert W. Thompson from Bethune-Cookman University. And Frank James from Philander Smith College. Ladies and gentlemen, these are your champions of change. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Everyone can just squeeze together really quick. Just one group shot. Thank you. One more round of applause. Thank you, Secretary Fox. I'd like to actually ask our first panel of champions to stay and join us on stage and introduce our first moderator, Demetria Henderson. She is a PBA member and a FAMU alumni. Welcome to the stage. Let's kick this off. Sorry. Clearly not.
Well, good morning. Again, I am Demetria Henderson and an alumni of Florida A&M University. All right.
FAMU?
Affectionately known as FAMU. And it brings me great pleasure to introduce our honorees and panelists, starting with Robert A. Johnson, Jr., Dr. Robert A. Johnson, Jr., from University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Freddie T. Vaughns of Bowie State University, Dr. Bayomi Ajayi Mijebi
Correct.
of Central State University, as well as Rosalind Elliott of Oakwood University, and last but not least, Dolores Alexander of Tuskegee University. Could each of you please highlight your title and tell us why you are an HBCU Champion of Change?
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Dolores Alexander from Tuskegee University. And I'm, you know. But I'm here standing on the shoulders of so many other people who work every day, sacrifice every day in a nameless way to support and motivate our students to go on to great things. I'm here because of Booker T. Washington, who came to recruit my grandfather to come to Tuskegee University. He couldn't come because he was the only son and the sharecropper, but he promised to send his kids, and he did. And so I'm part of that promise that he made. I'm also here because my parents were first-generation college students at Tuskegee University, and then they sent me to Alabama State University. I left there to go to Meharry Medical College. So I'm here just standing on the shoulders of so many people who paved the way. And I'm also here representing all the faculty at Tuskegee University who work to find funding, work to mentor and support, work to counsel and console, and sometimes to push and punch the students to be everything that they have the potential to become.
Wonderful.
And I'm Renee Elliott from Huntsville, Alabama, Oakwood University. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'm here because someone deemed me worthy. God has worked in my life in so many different ways. I didn't have the pleasure of attending an HBCU, but for the last almost 19 years, I've worked at Oakwood University, which is a wonderful HBCU in Huntsville. We have the pleasure of working with some of the brightest minds, and we do so many different programs that allow us to mentor and to help students. I've worked for about 17 years now with the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge program, which is a great example of a partnership of a major corporation with HBCUs that allows students to grow, to progress, to be empowered. And I just get the privilege of working with that. I also am chair of the communication department, where we are able to train students who will go out and serve God and humanity. Our students, I just can't say enough about them. They represent us well. They focus on service. One of our mottos is enter to learn, depart to serve, and our students get the chance to do that, as do we. So I just want to thank you for this opportunity and hope that we can continue to grow and to serve in a good way.
Wonderful.
Greetings from Central State University. I am Dr. Abayomi Ajayi Mijebi, and I've been at Central State University for 30 years, during which time I have seen the university do great things. Thanks to the excellent leadership of our very many presidents, President John W. Garland, now President Cynthia Jackson Hammond, they're doing an excellent job. And excellence at HBCUs is a function of very erudite leadership, which we see in the leaders of the institution. At Central State University, we are a premier Black institution, the only kind of its type north of the Mason-Dixon line. And we have, since 1887, served very effectively many minority students who have come. And by the way, majority students also. Some of them are my students. They've come. They have been affected positively by the rich academic programs we have at Central State University. And this particular program is a function of many factors. I'll just name a few which I have been able to make a contribution to. It's a function of a very strong office-sponsored research program. At Central State University, we have, based on the leadership of the university, mandate to the Sponsored Programs Office to help raise funds to provide support for our students. So our Office of Sponsored Programs raises about $10 million annually approximately, and that helps to provide direct support to the students. I have, over the past 30 years, worked with over 30 federal organizations doing research work in support of them, and of course, this research work are tethered to students obtaining experiences. And NASA has provided excellent support, the NASA Glenn Research Center. They take on our students, faculty go along with them, they interact with the best minds that help us explore the mysteries of the universe, and that is a direct function of President Obama's great leadership, talent, and vision, providing support to NASA to help us probe the universe and help have a spin-off effect of technology that helps to provide this engine that drives national progress, both in the industrial and in the economic arena. I've also to say that part of the great thing we do at Central State University is providing very, very good advising. I remember in my experiences, one of my students, Mr. Fred Magbaganuri, he was in the industrial tech program. My experience told me, no, you can do better. I'm going to get you into the engineering program. So I moved to get him from technology program to the engineering program. That, of course, gave me some flack from some of my colleagues who are protective of their particular domains. Today, Fred has done great things. He went to MIT, got a Sloan Management degree. He went over to Dayton, University of Dayton, got a PhD. He did become finalist for the NASA Astronaut Corps. He also is today director of a high-tech biomedical engineering company, and he comes to give back to Central State University. So good advice is extremely important to the successes of students in any institution.
Excellent. That's a wonderful
Thank you.
story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Freddie Vaughns. I'm from Bowie State University, located in Bowie, Maryland, one of the oldest HBCUs in the nation and the oldest in the state of Maryland. First, I want to thank the Congress people who are here today. Thank you for showing your interest in us and in education, and black education at that. My passion is, along with my beautiful wife, is to make sure that I hasten to add, you gotta keep the wife in mind there, absolutely. But our passion is to secure the future for others. And we work very hard through our church, through our work to do so. I happen to be the Assistant Vice President of Academic Affairs at Bowie State University. In my position there, I make sure that we adhere to the motto of Bowie State, and that's prepare our students for life, but to find strength, to find the strength to overcome the many obstacles that stop you from graduating. So we try to, and that's my job, to try to help those students get over that hump so they can graduate. And we want them to take pride, not only in themselves, but in the institution that gave them an opportunity to succeed. And so my job and my ambition is to make sure that HBCU stays alive, stays well, and not be swept under the rug and discontinued. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rob Johnson, Jr. I'm the chair of the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore down in Princess Anne, Maryland. I'm here because I have fond memories of my childhood and how the communities of Southern University and Grambling and Alabama State surrounded me and emphasized the importance of good education and giving back at sometimes. I had the pleasure of attending Camphor Memorial Methodist Church in Baton Rouge, where I believe there were 6 of the first maybe 50 or 60 black PhDs in mathematics were in attendance. And so I was surrounded by success in mathematics and science. And so I took out on the track to take advantage of that kind of nurturing and love and patience. And I believe that over the 16 years I've been at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, I'm able to understand that some of these kids may feel that one of us may be the first persons that really has taken an interest in them and wanting them to progress along and to graduation and become productive citizens. And so I take that responsibility very highly. And I think that over the times comes as these economic crises continue we need to still continue to commit to providing a high-quality education for the students that come to HBCUs. As the gentleman said here, and Secretary Fox, we have to take this commitment very greatly and secure resources, as many of us champions have done, in external grants, and provide those services for those students. Thank you.
First Lady of the United States hosted College Opportunity Day of Action. In what ways have you built networks to promote retention and opportunity to grow at your institutions? And just give us an idea of how you've been able to promote college completion as well.
Well, at Bowie State University, I'm fortunate to work with a president who cares quite a bit, Dr. Mickey L. Burnham, and a provost, Weldon Jackson, who have their finger on the pulse. One of the things that we do is we have a male initiative at Bowie State to promote our men and just to get them thinking about graduation, finishing school. Many of our males, our young ladies seem to be finishing school at a fairly good rate, but our males, for whatever reasons, monies, jobs, want to impress the young ladies, whatever it is, have issues back at home and what have you, they do not finish at the rate that the females are. So we have started something at Bowie, we call them our proteges, where we just talk about life, you know, whatever that may be, financial issues, home issues, or what have you. And we are seeing some small modicum of that working. We want to push that on a bigger scale at Bowie. So that, in keeping with the First Lady, this is one of the things that we want to do, and to try to continue that at Bowie.
In addition, at Central State University, which is typical, I think, of many HBCUs, there's a summer breach program which has been very, very helpful, where we reach out to students in high schools and get them in the summer to come to Central State, get immersed in the STEM programs, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs. And they are paired with mentors, and these mentors provide a very powerful overall direction for their growth in college. We also have research programs by which we apply to federal agencies to get funding. And this funding provides opportunities for students to work, do research, get paid for it, get experience, and move forward.
At Tuskegee University, we have a number of initiatives. So in addition to partnerships with community colleges like Wallace Community College in Selma, we also have a number of collaborations with large universities like University of North Carolina, Northeastern University, and University of California at Davis. And we leverage those partnerships to broaden the experiences for our students. One of our key strong points at Tuskegee is research. And I agree with Dr. Majibi. Involving students in research aids college completion because you ignite their passion, especially the students in the STEM. You make them feel like they're part of the creative process. They're not just taking a class, but they're actually participating in scientific discovery. That work has been supported by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, by the National Science Foundation, by the National Institutes of Health, by the USDA, and by the state of Alabama. And so we rely on those funds to provide these research initiatives for our students that help them stay and move forward in their careers.
At HBCUs, I think we all wear many hats, so we have so many different responsibilities, and sometimes there's a tendency to compartmentalize and say, this is what I do here, this is what I do here. But one of the things that I've learned is that we can learn lessons in different areas, and those lessons are transferable. With the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge program, for example, I've learned techniques that will help us to be successful in that program, and they transfer to our school in general. First, God first. You know, we put God first in everything, believing that He'll add everything else that we need. Secondly, just this whole idea of developing and fostering relationships with students. We develop relationships with them, help them to develop relationships with each other, and when they're able to find a place, some place that they fit in school, they're more likely to stay and to complete. And then the whole idea of instilling confidence, helping them to believe in themselves and believing in them. Because sometimes we need someone else to believe in us when we can't. I know for myself, I had an advisor, a mentor who believed in me, who said, kid, go to grad school, who said, go back and get your doctorate. And without that, when I couldn't believe in myself, my parents, my family put me on their shoulders and did believe in me and enabled me to complete. So some of those things are what we try to do for our students, without which some of them may not stick around and may not make it.
At the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, you can probably read the bio and learn that colleagues and I have secured a number of external resources, $3 million in excess. But we found that what was going to directly contribute to our uptick in getting students through the programs and graduation is some of the fundamental activities in English and math. And what we've done is took on an effort at University of Maryland Eastern Shore to put the resources together to turn around the fortunes of students in those fundamental math courses and English courses. We have a goal at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which I shouldn't say we, I have initiated a goal. And I'm hoping that my executive vice president and provost could we want to help lead the country in turning around the attrition that's happening due to poor performance in mathematics. And 5 years ago, we started a program of really taking a look at what was causing the kids to have trouble in those initial courses, and we put resources in place, and we've increased our successful completion rates in fundamental math courses from the low 30s and 40% to now over 65%. And I tell you, we've seen the results in graduation. We're expecting a 5% increase in six-year graduation rate. I guess that is being vetted through our university system of Maryland, but we're anticipating that result to be soon, and we believe that it has something to do with our attention to the fundamental courses as well as what we used to do in securing the resources for the high achieving students. So pay some attention to those fundamental courses, and you will start seeing a higher number of students coming through your programs and graduating.
So I'm a first-generation college student. And there was one thing that you said, Dr. Elliott, that stood out that was very profound, and that's at HBCUs, we wear a lot of different hats. So I'm curious to know, how have each of you played a role in college completion by being able to wear those different hats and touch students in a particular maybe example or circumstance of, how you've been able to do something transformative to keep students in school and graduate?
Let me take a shot at that first because I think it's taps at something very important that I want to get across. That's that I think we people in the academy do not perhaps speak very effectively or well enough about the fact that our job is really a calling. It will take all the amount of time you have. It's not an 8 to 5 job. The academics work takes 24 hours if you have that time. So around this table, there are people you've seen here who I have no doubts to say have spent a lot of hours in the early mornings, late nights, just working behind the scenes unknown, except for occasions like this, where they are working to add value to the students in the university. Yes, I have been able to help over 250 manufacturing engineering students to graduate, become plant managers, executives at General Motors and Ford, and some on their way to NASA. Some have gone to the best schools in the nation from HBCUs. They've gone to MIT, Virginia Tech, University of Minnesota, some of my students. And with all that, it just has taken a lot of energy and time. And I want to underscore the fact that we academicians put a lot more time than is apparent in getting our work done.
Well, I wear a lot of hats. I'm sure I'm not unique. I'm an administrator. I'm also a teacher. I also have a research lab. So I have a busy day every day. I often kid with my students, why do I have more homework than you? Every time I look around, I'm getting something else that has to be completed by tomorrow. But the good thing about having all those hats is that it allows us to integrate all the different things that we do. And sometimes that motivates students to consider options they would not have considered otherwise. My primary responsibility at Tuskegee University is as director of the Integrative Biosciences PhD program. It's a great program where students come in as free agents and they can do their research projects on anything. But one of the great deliverables for that program is that these graduate students, these doctoral degree students, often are mentors, near and peer mentors to the master students, to the undergraduate students. And there's something about a student who's been in that struggle with you, speaking to you, teaching to you, that motivates students to think, you know what, I can do that, that this guy can get a doctorate, then I have a shot. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing in terms of their perceptions of the students, but the students have been our greatest ambassadors. They've been the ones that have really driven people to be passionate about going into graduate degree programs. And then they're also the cheerleaders who say, come on, you can do it. Come on, just one more step. So I salute all of our students and the role that they play in being stakeholders in this degree pursuit.
Well, I'm the chair of mathematics and computer science. I'm the faculty athletics reps for the university to the NCAA. I'm the former chair of the faculty assembly and the Senate. But I think my most important job is an encourager and motivator of these young students. We have forgotten what fears they face as they take on this collegiate endeavor. And to share a kind word, to keep them motivated, to have patience when they stumble and fall, I believe is one of our best responsibilities on campus. We have all of the faculty student research activities that are promoting success and exposing kids to the academic, well, I could say the things that we do in academia, the research and the grantsmanship. But remember, we have 80% of the kids that probably don't participate in that. And if we're going to make a big dent in the, make a strides forward in completion rates in college, we have to pay attention to those who are barely understanding their potential and are just finding out what it means to work hard and complete college.
I would agree with that. A lot of our students don't have the financial means to complete college, and the finances play into stressors that we didn't have, or I didn't have when I was in college. Our students today struggle with more issues than I've ever seen. There are family issues, there are school issues, social issues, everything comes up. So I think that as we can learn to work with them on their level, to really sit down, talk with them, get to know them, and say, I understand where you're coming from. And that is not to say make excuses for poor performance. We're still holding them to just as high a standard, but while holding them to those standards, we work with them, meet them where they are, and bring them up to where they need to be. And when we can do that, we can better ensure their success.
One of the things that I do, I wear many hats as well. I'm a FAR as well as an administrator and a faculty member too. But I also run the summer program, Bulldog Academy, where we give students the opportunity to come in and get a jump start on their education, either to get over their developmental courses or to take credit-bearing English and math. I think what Dr. Johnson said is very, very crucial on several fronts. We need to get the students to get over these gateway courses, which is English English and math, and we do need to provide additional funding for them too. And one of the things I would like to stress is alumni giving, in terms of the alumni giving back to the institutions that gave them the opportunity. As I look around this audience here, I'm sure there are a number of young people in the audience now who are currently in school. If you're so, raise your hands, please, if you're currently in school. Thank you. My only thing I would like to say to you is finish your education and give back to the institution that gave you this opportunity. There may be somebody there who will piss you off. That's okay. That's okay. That's part of the maturation process. But I want you, once you graduate, to go back and give back to that institution. Thank you.
Let's give our panelists and honorees a round of applause.